right. Welcome. Welcome back to Act Root to Fruit. My name is Marcel Tassara. I'm a psychologist, and I am on a mission and a quest to better understand the roots of the contextual behavioral sciences so that the fruit that I deliver and hopefully other clinicians deliver to their clients is as pristine as possible. And today I am joined by Joe Oliver. He's a director of contextual consulting in London and also the joint director of the UCL postgraduate diploma for CBT for psychosis. You do research at King's College as well around psychosis and workplace, using ACT in the workplace, and the author of several books on psychosis, ACT for psychosis recovery and ACT and mindfulness for psychosis, and also has an upcoming book with Richard Bennett, Mindfulness and Acceptance Workbook for Self-Esteem. I met Joe in Sevilla at the World Conference, and it was my first World Conference. I think that I was like in the lobby. I was by myself, and I don't know if you've ever had the experience, Joe, of going to a conference by yourself and not knowing anyone, and you're like,
yeah.
Will someone invite me? Can I go along to lunch? And I think I was talking to your partner in the lobby, mm-hmm. and then you invited me to go for lunch, and that was very sweet of you. And it was kind of a who's who of down under CBS. I felt very privileged. I don't want to drop any names, but it rhymes with fuss. Okay, was there? Yeah,
you're in the proper in crowd.
Yeah,
in crowd of in crowd.
Yeah. And actually, so for any RFT fans out there and anyone who's been following along, after I interviewed Yvonne Barnes-Holmes, I asked her if she had any recommendations of voices who needed to be heard, and Joe, I have to say you're the first name she named. So
that's very kind of Yvonne. Very kind of her.
Yeah. So that's Joe. Welcome, Joe.
Ah, thank you. Yeah, it's so good to be here and talking here. That's awesome.
Yeah, I really appreciate you willing to be on and talk about these topics. I'm wondering, the first thing that comes to mind is I just have been consuming the article that Steve Hayes wrote on mentalism and behavior relations. It's a kind of well-known article that I could post a link to in the description, and just kind of wondering, like, why do you think it's important that clinicians who are practicing this see internal activity, thoughts, and feelings as behavior?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been on this journey answering that myself for a long time, and I feel like coming from my place, originally training as in CBT, big emphasis on the C, mm-hmm. The cool, sexy, fun stuff, and not so much emphasis on the dry, dull, yawn, behaviorism stuff.
Yeah.
This has been a kind of like a long journey trying to figure this question out and get my head around this stuff. I teach a lot of ACT, CBS, and occasionally RFT, and I also teach CBT as well. Mm-hmm. So I find myself in this kind of unique place of moving in between these two worlds. I'm dyed in the wool through and through ACT clinician. That's what I do, live and breathe in my work and my life. It's sort of increasingly just how I see the world now.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be able to move in between these two worlds and these two different viewpoints, and get a sense of different places where practitioners don't emphasize those behavior relations so much, or are far less important. And I feel like we, as a CBS community, and those of us that are behaviorists, need, of course, to have some respect for those folks, and understanding their viewpoint, and respect because of the time, the energy, the wealth of evidence that's behind cognitive and behavioral approaches, writ broad, but also understanding that and the evidence and the fact that these are approaches that work. They're impactful and they make a difference.
Yeah.
You'd have to also think a little bit about understanding how those approaches work, and I feel like the having an articulation of things like behavior relations help us pin down into our a functional analysis of how humans do activity,
Yeah.
where that is missing sometimes from a cognitive perspective. Maybe that's putting it too broadly or too strongly to say it's missing, but there's a bit of a sense that an underpinning mechanism somehow, or that underpinning theory is pretty. This feels like a big sort of elephant in the room there,
Okay.
in terms of making sense of that. So what do we have from behavior relations? I feel like that's an important thing about all that comes from behaviorism, that kind of deep lens through which to look at all these things that we humans do. These enacting, emitting, taking part of, participating, all the sort of broad stream of things that we're involved in. And
for anybody listening, if I could pause you there, what do you mean by behavior relations?
So, a nice metaphor I like to think of that I think just perhaps captures this is if we're seeing, say, behaviors like a stream, a constantly flowing stream, and if we're looking to do our best and pull out something, a subset of that stream, or a piece of a piece of behavior, we also kind of want to look at and understand the things that preceded this behavior. Of course, if we look up the stream, we'll look at the river, then we're looking at all the things that preceded, and there's different parts of the river and the ongoing pieces. So from that analysis, then it makes sense to think of these as behavior relations, as opposed to perhaps other approaches which would look at something more mechanistic in terms of a description between two things. So a thought and a behavior, that the two pieces are articulated. When we have a stream, then of course we just pull out that one piece just for our own unit of analysis that is determined by the observer as that's necessary.
Okay.
So that's kind of one way I like to think about it. I
Okay.
like thinking about it as a river flowing through.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's helpful. And I don't know if you remember where you were heading when I interrupted you before I asked for some.
Absolutely no idea. It was important though. Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, gosh, it was a good point I was going to make there.
What I'm understanding about behavior relations is a kind of a interplay between what's going on outside and what's going on inside and outside, and the relationship between those two things. Am I misinterpreting that term?
That sounds good to me. Yeah.
Okay. While we're on this topic of CBT, I guess I'm wondering, like, from a dyed-in-the-wool act person, why is insight not enough?
When we're thinking about insight, insight as a term has a big old tradition, doesn't it, in terms of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And some psychotherapeutic approaches put it like as the sort of holy grail, like that's the thing you look for. I think when I think about insight from a behavioral perspective, I think about what it is and what we do there. I think that's like the sort of the emerging beginnings of something. It's like we plant a seed and then something kind of sprouts and emerges as people start to broaden their repertoire, add in different relations, look to make new derivations that are different additional ones in alongside ones that they're doing. And I would say insight, it's a behavior in and itself. That's we're opening up something, and someone has insight, and what do they have there? They have then a new perspective, a new way to look at something, a new stance towards internal experience. There's new behavior there's emerging, but I kind of feel like any new behavior, it's like it's a precious little, I don't know, a plant, or it's like a candle that someone lights up and they sort of protect it. It's special and new, and they step outside into the big old world, and it's windy and it's sometimes hurricanes out there. It's hard to kind of hold on to this thing, meaningful as it is, and maybe there's some warmth and something new and interesting there.
Yeah.
So, of course, then part of is, I don't know, part of it is practice, right? Like helping people to hold on to this and take it out to new places, providing contexts that support them with that. or I feel like, I don't know, like 80-90% of my work is just reminding people, hey, there's a different way to do this. This whole familiar pattern you've got going on, you can do it differently. Don't forget to take this thing through, and then helping people to set up context and have new cues that remind them of this new behavior.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think maybe, I'm thinking about what we talked about earlier in terms of a role play, and I think that it would be a good moment to kind of roll into that. What do you think?
Sure, sounds
okay.
good. Yeah.
So I'm the consultee and you're the consultant, and I'm struggling with getting past some struggles in ACT, and so I'll start talking and you help me out. Ask what you want to ask. And so, I found that sometimes, especially early in my journey, that I fall on explaining ACT to clients. Okay. And it has to do with this kind of insight. I'm a kind of an information junkie, and so I like to find out new things about myself, and I don't know if that's like part of what happens when I'm explaining,
You mean like you're imparting information? You kind of like passing over the candle?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess I just kind of wonder if that. I know that I'm not alone in that. I don't feel unique, and I wonder if that's part of the process, and that's part of like me. That has been part of me, like not having this metabolized, not like embodying it. So it's just like I'm going to give you the experience that I've gotten so far, which is like reading some books and like really identifying with the information and liking it. But I know it. I don't think it's very as helpful as I want to be to someone.
Yeah. What so as you're talking there, I'm thinking like, I wonder what more helpful would look like. And I'm also kind of wondering, what is it that then stops and gets in the way of being more helpful? Can I start with the first question though?
Please.
Yeah. What does more helpful look like?
I think the experience. Giving someone an experience, not like a Wikipedia of ACT, and or FAP or whatever, and so that would be more helpful. And the experience. I think that's it. Just giving someone that experience. I see therapy as a unique part of someone's day, someone's week, and it's not that unique if I'm just regurgitating some information.
Yeah, sure. So they get to have an experience, live and breathe what you're talking about, and try it out for themselves and put it on and give it a go.
Yeah.
Can I ask the second part of my question then?
If you'll remind me what it was, yeah.
It sounds like the first bit was you've got a good sense of what that is and how you want it to be. What is it that Marcel gets in the way of you doing more experience then? Less Wikipedia, more experience. What kind of what holds up?
I would say maybe some insecurities. Like I think if I were to see a pattern in this over my time, it would be like I start with experience, and then there's like half an hour left in the session, or whatever, and it's like, well, I've got to like kind of explain to them, and I've got to reinforce this, okay, and so and also and I said insecurity. The insecurity is kind of, I want to make sure that they get what we're doing, and that they're not leaving confused, or not. This isn't as impactful or meaningful as possible.
Right. Yeah. This is one of the things that just sort of, as I hear you describing this, I can't help but think that here's an area, knowing you as I do, and hearing you talk about it, you're talking about something that deeply matters to you. You care about this.
Yeah.
You care about making a difference. Can I lean in a little to that word insecurity? Like when you said that, I was curious about that. And the question actually that came up to me, I was wondering to myself, where does that come up the most? That thing, like what kind of people does that come up with most? What kind of situations?
I would say folks that I am trying to kind of develop the relationship with. Ones where I'm concerned that I'm not kind of cutting the mustard. Is that how you say it? Or whatever. I'm not up to par. And whether that's because of experiences they've had or how I see them and their intellect.
Mm-hmm.
Or just their hesitancy to engage in the therapy process.
Right. Okay.
That's a big one. That's a real big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is them being unsure about it, being hesitant.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps some qualities about them as well, maybe just in terms of their style or where relationship matters, and that intellectual thing perhaps for some people comes up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Yeah.
when that lands, what happens for you? What happens to you?
I would say it's like, let me go to something I am secure in, and that is, discussing why what we did is useful, or, how the mind works, I've got a talk track that I can go to.
Okay.
And so that's like, oh, let me just do that because I have that rehearsed,
Right. Okay. Got it. So that's familiar. You know that one, huh? You know that one well.
Yeah.
Okay. What's it like when it's the absolute opposite to that? When it's not rehearsed, when it's not like, it's not going to that familiar place, when insecurity shows up and something different happens. Does that ever happen? So what that's like? What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's just more present, and I find that I don't finish the session like trying to tie it up with a nice bow. It's kind of I let the experience be what it was, and maybe also I kind of ask a question that I really like that I picked up from Mavis, and that's like, what stands out to you about what we just did, and so kind of reinforcing it that way by what's important to the client.
Okay, yeah.
So it's less about me and me explaining, and then taking it from, what I think of as like from here to here. I want it to be more here than up here.
Got it. Yeah. So, when your hand's here, that's on your heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of where you're feeling stuff.
Yeah.
Emotional kind of sense in your body.
Yeah.
And moving down and less from up here in your head and your intellect and planning and thinking and getting busy.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's a nice metaphor, Marcel, like kind of dropping from here down into here, coming back into your body, and where things perhaps don't need to be tied up neatly with a bow, where it doesn't rest solely on you. There's someone else in the room who's participating, is there to answer those questions or to be along with you as you're experiencing that there.
Yeah, when you say that, what stood out to me there is this doesn't have to be all about me, up to me. I think are the words you used, and that's like it's part of that is this, steering the ship, and I have it's hard to let go of the wheel.
Yeah.
Or whatever you call it on a ship. I don't know what you call it on a ship. You're from New Zealand, you should know that.
It's a wheel. I think. That's a wheel. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. You're dropping in lots of nice metaphors here. Right? There's another one, like that sort of sense of having a grip and know the direction, like have sort of real certainty about where it goes.
Yeah.
So can I just track that flow a little bit? If there was a bit of a stream there, there's some things that show up either, I don't know, in the person or how they're responding, and something appears for you that we gave that word insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways you might go about it is sometimes you go up into your head and your grip goes firmly on the wheel.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always do that, right? Sometimes that happens, insecurity shows up, and something else happens where you kind of drop down, as you put it, which I like, drop down to your body and different things are available then. It doesn't have to be so neat and tied up and finished. you can
Yeah.
step back out to the person in front of you. Yeah. So is there? No, I wouldn't want to kind of put it too broadly, but there's a bit of a difference there between how you respond when that first thing shows up, whether you choose to go up or you choose to go down.
Mm. And can you ask that again? I'm not sure I understood the question.
It wasn't a question. It was just kind of just
Okay.
me. Sort
Oh,
of
I see. Okay.
Yeah, summarizing that a little bit.
Yeah. I guess I heard in there if there's a difference, and maybe it's something I'm wanting to hear, and that's like why do I go one way and not the other way? Like what's the fork in the road
Yeah, absolutely.
or the
Can I
choice
ask-
point? I don't know.
That could be a good term for it. Yeah, yeah. Give me a little bit more about it. Can I ask a bit more about insecurity?
Mm-hmm.
That's a kind of big old word, but what's that like when it shows up? What's that thing?
It's this. I should. It's in my head for sure. A lot of it, and I should be able to navigate this situation.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I can feel my hands tightening around the wheel when you say that.
yeah, and then I think there's shame there too, around, not having done enough work, not having, read enough or consulted enough, and or having spent too much time on YouTube when I should have been, doing more vital, important things. Yeah, I think shame is intertwined with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of got some things. It's got some things to say about what you should do. It's got some. There's a bit of it that's it's evocative, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like shame has a punchiness to it. Do you know what I mean? It's got some
Yeah.
weight to it. It sort of moves
Yeah.
around and bossy and.
Yeah, I've got to attend to it, and I tend to it by, explaining things.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You were asking there about that choice point. I was sort of feeling like, something like that shows up, insecurity, shame, and it's bossy and has lots to say. I can see how it'd be easy to go down one side of that direction. The one you're describing is up into your head, like, or your hands firm up on the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
It would take a certain something to do that other thing you do, like drop down into your body.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine, I don't know, if that was me experiencing that, I would imagine I would need a certain something to drop into my body. I probably, if it was me experiencing that, it wouldn't be something that would just happen automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Do you catch it? What it is that allows you to go down, or does it, do you know?
I would say noticing how I'm doing something. I'm performing. Just noticing what's going on. Whether it's the pitch of my voice, where I'm speaking from. I speak from up in here when it's
Right.
it's high.
Yeah.
And I'm more and then how fast I'm talking.
Okay.
So noticing these qualities helps me to remind. It's kind of a reminder to just slow down and it's like it's almost like a lot of it is like I don't know that I trust that someone else is going to get what I want them to get. That's part of it, and so I've got to just like force it through, the square peg through the round, just, and so I noticed that and I'm like, wait a minute, like this is, anyone sitting across from me, I have to like just really honor where they're at. And how can I do that by I can most effectively do that by just being present with what's happening right now, not kind of trying to pull it to somewhere else.
Right. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Fascinating. Wow. There's a lot of heart in what you're describing there, Marcel. This is a rich experience.
Yeah.
There's a part of me goes, wow. When when you describe it like that, I can imagine that would be. Oh, I'd love to be one of those people sitting across from you. That sounds like a really nice thing. It's like what's showing up in me is like a little flutter of excitement or something in there, and it reminds me you're talking about something that matters to you. And I can hear you as you're at those spaces. You catch yourself and hear this going up, and you slow down. Just a bit of breathing space arrives there.
Yeah.
So, and you're talking about things that really matter to you in terms of how you work and how you are with people, and perhaps are sometimes in pain or hurting or need space to go through their own process.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we're getting to this place, I'm thinking about how when I am able to drop down and I slow down, I think I'm able to process some of those qualities too with the client. Like I think initially, when I was learning something new, when we're learning something new, it's kind of like I gotta pretend that I know what maybe I'm not sure I do. And I'm at now I'm very happy to ask the client, I noticed that I was doing a lot of explaining there, and I kind of, what was that like for you? Is that, or what's, is what I'm talking about like helpful right now? Kind of acknowledging the process and acknowledging, what's actually going on for me.
What's the thing you're talking about there? If that's a direction, right?
Yeah.
It's on your compass. What's that thing you're talking about there? Could you put a word to that thing?
I guess connection.
Okay.
Yeah, because connection to the client rather than disconnection and me. Yeah.
Up and away and disappeared. Kind of there with them. Got it. Yeah. Okay. Hey, nice. Wow. Thank you. I feel like there's a richness there. In that piece there, there's a lot that's going on. This is sort of last thing I maybe want to say on that is it's just about, it's this funny thing, right? It's just about when that stuff shows up. It's that kind of wanting to explain, wanting the person to get this really important gem of information because it really matters.
Yeah.
Wanting to be, I don't know, make the client come along for the journey. And all the kind of stuff that shows up, and the heavy shame thing, this act metaphor, but on the other side of that, gosh, isn't it funny just how that starts to speak to things that really deeply matter to you? And I can feel that as I hear you talk about it. It's like this is not inconsequential. This you really care about this stuff. What's that phrase? Where your values are, lies your pain, and that where your pain is, lies your values. Yeah. Okay. I hear you speak a lot about that there.
Thank you. Well, how will we stop there? The role play. End scene.
Cut.
So thank you. That was nice. I'm wondering, without getting too far away from the information and the energy of what we just did, if you could step back and kind of unpack some of my behaviors, like from a kind of functional contextual way of looking, or do kind of a mini functional analysis of what you saw for me. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I was assuming that was a real play, but I don't know if it was or not. But
yeah. And also, I mean, I'm trying to channel some of my earliest struggles with this. Yeah. Now I'm a master act clinician. Just so anyone listening,
just so they weren't aware already.
I don't want to confuse anybody with.
Yeah, I've got those issues are dealt with long ago.
I couldn't remember that word shame. I had to write it down.
Quickly Google it.
Yeah.
I feel like I just appreciate you sharing that, and it's interesting watching my own reaction. Go, oh wow, yeah. This is so important. This is the things I go through constantly. These are the things about being a practitioner who working within a model that asks us, invites us to step forward with authenticity and genuineness in an environment that's incredibly complex. What do the military folks call it? Like volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And if there's ever a description of therapy or practitioner interactions, that's got to be it. And what a great place for shame to arrive and say, nope, not good enough, must be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was sort of, well, I was listening to you describe that, having that kind of reaction myself, and allowing myself to tune into how I was feeling and responding, and listening to those points of pain, if I could call it that, and those points of the value that came up, and that sort of interaction between the two of those. And of course, that was, everything you're describing was packed full of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could hear you just talking a lot about this stream, as it were, of behavior. And this is what we are talking about before, like, the behavior relations, and we were thinking about, let's pulling out a little unit and trying to understand it, and things that come before that maybe increase or decrease the probability of something familiar happening, or this really interesting thing was a time where something new happened. I feel like a lot of our therapy work we're doing is helping illuminate newness. Is that, coming back to that inside idea, like that's I feel like the sort of the seed of change is illuminating, adding something in that verbal network of something new, whether that's happening, reflecting on your previous experience, or perhaps even something that's happening live. It was going through my mind to ask a little bit about what it was like live between the two of us, and we wouldn't have time, but I would have been curious about that.
Yeah.
And it was I was hearing there, you described it like a choice point, and that was a nice way to have it, like something arrives, and then the things that are pulling you in different directions, like up and down, tightening on the wheel, or doing something else that was kind of more into your body, and less tighter, less gripping.
Yeah.
You're very metaphorical, Marcel. It's packed full of metaphors. It was just flying by. I was like, wow, just which ones do we catch here?
Yeah, there's too many, probably.
Yeah.
Do you? Can I ask you, if as I ask you for the question I did following this, if maybe you notice some of the same things showing up right now?
In as we're talking here,
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I noticed myself getting. It was a point just before I noticed myself speeding up, and I speed up when I get excited, and I speed up when I get anxious, and the two of those often co-occur. When I get anxious and excited, I can talk fast, and I noticed myself then doing this thing, this dropping down. It's such a nice metaphor. I find so helpful for me, being able to drop into my body, as an alternative place to inhabit. And then when I want to go up into my head, and usually, I mean, of course, it's not a bad thing, but a lot of the time, in the face of an uncomfortable feeling that I feel here, it's me trying to solve it, or trying to problem solve it, or fix it, or get rid of it, or hide it, and like that, a soothing balm to that is that I find when that shows up, and I drop in my body, and I kind of ask myself, like, what's important here, what really matters, and what is at stake, and what happens, what really matters, as I was reflecting on it now, and as I have been, is my connection with you, and this podcast, wherever this might go, and if there's anything that in our interaction together can be illuminating for other people. That's
beautiful.
Pulls me in a different place than going up into my head and having to be intellectual or sort of together and know what I'm talking about. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks for asking me. That's a nice question.
And so, functionally, from looking at like the kind of ABCs of my behavior, what I heard you say in terms of where you were going is kind of getting me to see more of what was going on for me, rather than being so focused on appeasing the shame or the insecurity.
Yeah, that's yep, exactly. Yeah. So thinking about, and it was interesting to me that you had this alternative repertoire available to you. So I assume you've got a lot of experience with this. You probably thought about it a lot, and that is available there suggests there, if there's a coherence there, There's a ability to. It's not like super tight and coherent. It's not like there's movement here. And so yeah, tracking what are the things that precede things like insecurity and shame showing up, and then what are the things that come afterwards, and looking for those novel instances that where it's not like shame doing all the determining of what happens next.
Okay.
Yeah. So I sort of feel like, sometimes that's kind of what insight is, right? Adding kind of new derivations in, sometimes for some folks, or adding new, expanding the relational network. And, people have those kind of, oh, right, okay, yeah. And, they're behaving in that moment. There's a behavior, and there's that kind of little seed, or that little flame just kind of sprouts up, and we can do those really cool things of just, like, hey, I see this really precious dear thing. What can we do with that? How can we foster and grow it and allow it to flourish? And
I really appreciate that, because I think that the way I asked and the way I was thinking about that initial question that I asked you around why insight isn't sufficient is a kind of myopic way of looking at insight, and I guess I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I try and get back into your, what you're saying about the experience bit, because if insight is just left at that and set aside, then I feel like we're doing people an injustice if we're not asking for more, and how people can take this out into the real world and do new, cool, and exciting things with it. But also reflecting on the fact that it's happening live is so super important. There it is. I think it's one of the things that functional analytic psychotherapy really helps remind us of this thing, and how to be interpersonally experiential. So important.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the thing I want to mention that we've been alluding to is the uniqueness of, in particular, these CBS therapies compared to other psychotherapies in terms of the flavor of the interaction. I find it to be highly, highly unique compared to what I've experienced in my own therapies with kind of general therapy, you know. And I can't group everybody together, but I think that there's a certain presence to how a magic to that presence too.
Yeah. For sure. I absolutely agree. It's like it helps us. I think there's a few kind of things that set the context for that to happen. I think the behavioral piece becomes so important. We're observing people behave. At the same time, of course, we're observing ourselves behave as we have this interaction that's happening here. So this thing then becomes really important. It's not like just some kind of, I don't know, alien scientist watching someone in a lab prodding and poking them in the right direction. Of course not.
Yeah.
And there's the humanness too of it. Like as I was observing myself responding to your content and what was showing up for you, and just this human constant dance backwards and forwards, and this reminder that we are all in this together. This is, of course, a big old verbal soup, human soup, that we're participating in. Lends itself to that, that reminder that we're here together with this. Yeah,
and I notice that when I'm there in this, I'm a lot less drained at the end of the day. The more time I spend in what we're talking about here, I'm more. I feel like enlivening kind of. I'm enlivened by the work that I do.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's what's your theory about why it's less draining?
I don't. Well, I'm gonna drop it into the present. Okay, so I'm paying a lot of attention to you, Joe, and how you are and I want to set up an environment where you are completely uninhibited and totally comfortable, you know. And I guess I'm like am like looking for cues to make sure that that's the case. And so that's similar to what we talked about in the real play. And it's like keeps me from just kind of like, well, Joe's wherever the fuck Joe's at, in his life and what's going on with him. It's not my job to, and it's like that kind of that like wrestling with that,
Yeah.
and yeah. What are you hearing there?
Wrestling what for it to be just so?
Well, it's like it's in between like me, like
gotta be perfect.
Me kind of manipulating a situation. I guess it's like in a behavioral way, slightly maybe on both colloquially and behaviorally, and behaviorism, and then also just kind of like, well, I want to respect where Joe's at, and I want to respect where I'm at. Because if I'm looking just at where Joe's at, and if Joe's comfortable and whatever, then I'm not like paying attention to. I kind of lose focus, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting, like sort of reflecting on you saying that, because I think coming back to what we were saying before about this like behavioral stream, and sometimes we as therapists talk a lot about reinforcing a person's behavior, which is such a blunt way of kind of putting it, because of course what are we doing there really? We're offering kind of like a drop into that stream in the hope that it nudges something in a different direction of this flow this person's experiencing. And your attention on me and trying to set the perfect environment, you of course, this is just one part of my stream, which includes, all the other things that it's very hot in where I am at the moment, which is a garage, which is, I can hear family upstairs and I can hear the neighbors outside by the garage wall, and it's warm. I've got my previous experience my day before that I've had. The fact that our son woke up at kind of 11 o'clock last night howling like he's never done before. That all comes to bear in this kind of thing here. And it's interesting, isn't it? And, of course, you didn't know that, and you would have had, you sensed, of course, there's this stream here. But isn't it interesting how we want to get into that? It's so human to want to get our hands on that wheel and just like, I am going to control this. And when we kind of step back and think about it, just the ridiculousness of it, of trying to control what. And gosh, that's such a contrast to, as I listen to you describe, what, I'm going to, that thing of like, Joe's got his shit going on, I've got mine here, and I'm going to be here with mine, and, he is what he is. And this is sort of, I don't know, when I hear you say that, it's like, okay, just this acceptance, there isn't a word. For what is there.
It took like 15 episodes to get to that word.
Finally,
you won the lottery, Joe.
Probably feels important to have that word at least mentioned once, right?
Well, so I'm kind of gleaning from this, and maybe I'm hearing it in my own head, and I want you to verify or disqualify what I'm saying, but it's like it's kind of like maybe functionally what I'm doing is like kind of saying, what you have going on is not appropriate right now. It's not okay to have that. I need to be the one to be able to kind of have some effect on your stream.
Sure.
Am I communicating clearly what I'm?
Yeah. Which is an interesting message, isn't it? Like, you're not appropriate.
Yeah.
That's not appropriate. You shouldn't have that.
That's the name of my that's the name of my private practice. Actually, I didn't tell you that.
Right, I bet you're full, right? Packed out.
Shame on you. That's the subtitle.
Yeah. Because we feel like we need a little bit more shame in society at the moment, don't we?
Yeah, right. Well, that's okay. That's really helpful though for me to think about, because it's like we're talking about insecurity and how that just blunder. It can really take me off course from how I want to be.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to kind of. I sort of think about my own insecurity and like my own journey over life with insecurity, and one of the things I think I've learned to love my insecurity. That's not insecurity. That's not kind of the word for it. That sort of sets up that relationship with this thing that's there, and it's kind of has control over it. It's big and it looms large. To do certain things, I have to be not have this insecurity show up. And part of that kind of different relationship I have with is that I listen to it. I let it speak. I let it speak to the things I really care about. I let it talk to the things that that matter to me. And the couple of things that really stand out is taking care of myself, not pushing myself, which means just being okay with good enough. And it also means being authentic. Man, I'm 45 years old and I'm going to be still learning this if I make it to 90. But for me, being authentic is letting those close around me know what's going on the inside, and taking responsibility for stepping up and communicating that. And that's the thing of authentic. Speaks to me. Not authentic. Insecurity says, "Hey, there's this thing here going on. You have stuff showing up here. What does this speak to? What matters to you?" Well, two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
It's two things coming together. Yeah. It's interesting you're saying about, your experience of therapies and the experience of, say, of the sort of the context that I think ACT practitioners, CBS practitioners create, which I think largely is really, really radically different. This sort of sense of, that... we're in this together. It's human, this human condition. And I remember, way back in, I had a therapist who once made a kind of sort of offhand comment to me, which was sort of implied that, I experienced something like that too. And I just walked out of there mind blown. It's like, oh my God, what, really? You, this kind of like, exalted therapist. And gosh, it made such a difference. Yeah. And I'm not saying, of course, that needs to be the sum total of a piece of work, but I think there's, when we communicate this humanness to people sitting across from us, it's important.
That was my draw to ACT when I first picked up an ACT book. Was like, wow, they're talking about human issues. They're not talking about like client issues. They're talking about other humans and sticking themselves in that soup.
Yeah.
Well, this has been beautiful, Joe. I'm we did a lot of wading in the waters of real play and unpacking that, and I really appreciate the authenticity and the Kiwi flavor that you add to the show here. Is that pejorative, Kiwi? Is that a
no, not at all?
It's okay. Okay, all right. Yeah. It's okay to say. Okay,
we love that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And apropos, given your workbook coming out on self-esteem, so thank you. Really appreciate your lending your voice to this project and guiding me through the woods here.
That's very welcome. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure talking with you and talking with heart. We've talking, the practicality of the hands, and we've had talking head as well. And I've got a nod, of course, to the bust of Charles Darwin sitting behind us, staring gruffly at me this whole interaction. Is this science, Joe Oliver?
I guess I didn't think about how that might influence. He's not looking very pleased, I have to say. He's contemplative. He's by himself in the woods right now.
He's warming up though. He's warming up. He's coming around. Yeah,
he's coming around. Yeah.
Give him another few episodes. He'll be there.
Yeah. So Joe is available for consultation, and I'll put a link to your website and also a link to upcoming training you have January 2021. Around your book. It's going to be with Richard Bennett, your training, I take it? Yeah? Okay, so we'll put a link to that. And what else? Anything else that we missed?
I think we covered it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That's covered some ground there.
Yeah. So, and then also I just want to mention, speaking of Charles Darwin, I've got a slower moving project that I also started during this quarantine. And that's a podcast called Honorable Evolution, and I'm interviewing folks who have prioritized health and figuring out how we can honorably evolve as a species. And so I'm excited about that, and check that out if you're interested. And yeah, thank you, Joe.
Awesome. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks so much.
Yeah.
But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me. But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me. But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me.